Welcome to Dream Farm. On today's episode, Carson and I are going to go around the farm and we're going to plant wintergreens and oats plus from Whitetail Institute into some of my bean plots. And we've had a really good summer for rainfall. The beans look really good, but I've had really good success over the years of creating that two-layer system. And beans are pretty resilient when you drill into them. Surprisingly so. I've had good success just running the drill right through the beans and putting a second layer in. So as the beans mature and then they end up, turning yellow and brown, well, the second layer is coming up underneath. And that's my wintergreens, which is a brassica blend. And then I'm going to use oats plus. And it's really a nice combination because the cereal grains will grow really fast and the deer like to eat those. And then the brassicas come a little bit slower, but they have a lot of tonnage. So they're really good for the winter. So you end up with a food plot that not only has the grain, which is the beans, but you have the green, which is the oats and the brassicas. I like this system a lot. It also is really good at keeping weeds out because there's so much there from a competition standpoint that you don't get a flush of weeds coming in towards fall. So any open spots where the deer have been browsing real heavily on the beans, those fill in. And then for the most part, you get, even in the spots that have a really nice stand of beans, you get that second layer coming underneath. A couple of weeks ago, I drilled SummerSlam and Power Plant into a few spots. So I've got some of that left in the drill, so I need to vacuum that out. But we'll show you, so this is 2 weeks worth of growth. And so there's some of the plots had beans in there, some thin beans, but you'll see how well that stuff does. And it's mostly peas and iron and clay peas. And it's not really common in the Midwest that people plant peas. And we'll talk about that in an update episode here in the next few weeks. But it's surprising how well they do. The deer will browse on them during the summer, but they grow back really fast. They bounce back a lot faster than beans. So anyway, I've got to get those out of the drill first and then we'll get to work. The blend that I'm planning is the wintergreens and the oats plus. So let's look at what's in those really quick. Then I'm going to talk about the challenges of mixing in the hopper and drilling two different blends and trying to get the rate right. Hear that eagle? There's a baby eagle. We got eagles every year in this little nest up the hill. And those baby ones, once they learn to fly, they always come down here and roost right by the building. I don't know if they're just curious what we're doing or if they're bored or lonely or whatever, but he's just sitting like 50 yards away watching us. We'll start the tractor, run the four-wheeler. He doesn't care. He just wants to be here. Okay, wintergreens, forage kale, dwarf forage kale, tall tine turnip, which is their purple top turnip, trophy annual rape, purple top turnip, and that's basically what's in this blend. And I planted this last year in this same setup where I was, drilling into beans, and gosh, the deer loved it. It was the very best spot we had on the farm. It was a spot we called it Old Unreliable, but man, oh man, there was a lot of deer using that and some really nice bucks. So that's what's motivating me, even though my beans are looking pretty good. I want to get this blend back in there, even if I destroy some of the beans, just because it was so attractive last fall and last winter. I don't want to run the risk that those deer that were anchored around those plots might drift off and go someplace else. So now let's talk about the oats plus. Oats plus triticale. Yep, that's what's in there. Oats and triticale. So it's let's see, 87% oats. The rest of it's triticale. Triticale is just another cereal grain similar to like a winter wheat or a rye or oats. I don't think it's a winter hardy, if I'm not mistaken. It might be. I planted it before. So just a nice combination, something to fill in, green up really fast like I mentioned earlier. Setting the rate is going to be a real challenge here because I can pull up on the chart and I can find out what's the right rate for wintergreens and I can find out what's the right rate for oats. But when you mix the two together, probably what I'm going to have to do is set it for the oats. And that way, as I blend them in the hopper, then it'll feed the wintergreens out along with the oats at the rate that's correct for the oats. That's kind of the way I'm thinking. So I'm going to run about a half rate of oats and that should get me over the 5 acres that we're going to plant today. And then that should pull the wintergreens through because it's a smaller seed at the correct rate. That wraps up the efforts for today. I've got probably 3 experiments that came out of this day, and one of them was how badly those beans were beat up and how well they'll bounce back. In my experience, they're pretty tolerant of being run over with the drill. I think the tractor tires where they broke off the stems, I think probably those beans are going to die, but I think the rest of them will come back. So that'll be really nice because, like I said, I like that 2-layer approach where you've got the grain for the winter and then the green, which, you know, the deer will start eating on that fairly soon, but that'll take them into the winter also. And I've had really good success with the Whitetail Institute wintergreens. It's been a really strong part of my food plot program here. The other experiment is whether that little small spot that we planted into, gosh, what was that? Winter peas, oats, the Whitetail Institute oats, and the wintergreens. It's a spot we call the scrape tree, and that's been a really good spot for us over the years. I mean, we've had some good hunts there, but the field is so big that it's hard to get the deer to come within bow range. So it'll be interesting to see if just by planting that little green spot right next to that stand, if that will give the deer motivation to come a little bit closer there. So, but it'll be a while before we know. I mean, it'll be October before we know the answer to that, but that's another thing that we're going to watch for here. And then the third one is drilling versus broadcasting. And I've done a lot of my own personal, experimentation or research on that. And I always come back to drilling is way better. But I did have a chance to run the drill over this part of it. The drill was empty. So I ran it through here and really roughed up the ground. So I think that broadcasting into soil like this, that's been, opened up a little bit more, I think I'll get a lot higher success rate than just going on to hard sun-baked ground. I've got one more thing left, and then I'll have the whole planting regimen done for this year. I do have to fertilize the spots where we drilled and broadcast the wintergreens. And usually I don't do that until I see them pop out of the ground, because even though with the drill, we're going to get them to come up. I know they're going to come up. But some of the spots when you go back and you broadcast, if you get a long dry spell, you may not get anything to grow. And there's no point in putting a bunch of fertilizer down if the stuff isn't coming up. So I always wait and see it pop out of the ground.